Hello everyone, welcome back to Witches of the Moon. I'm your Friday hostess, Natalie. This week's topic is creating a sacred space away from home. Now I want to cover this from two different angles. So the first angle I'm going to talk about is something that we covered, I believe last season or the season before, which was travel altars. And I know that Daya had this wonderful video where she was showing altars that she puts into Altoids cans, which I thought I had an Altoids can here, but I guess I don't. So she makes little travel altars that you can fit into an Altoids can. For those of you that know what those are, those that don't, they're the little tin cans that have all the little really strong peppermints in them. And you can actually fit a lot of little things into that you can use to set up as a little mini altar wherever you go. And it's pocket sized or purse sized, so you can just throw it in a purse, in a bag, in your pocket, and you always have it with you. So I like to keep something like that in my car. And the other thing that I do is when I travel, particularly if I know I'm going to be out of town during an SBOT or a Sabbath. I don't really formally acknowledge the SBOTs. I mean, I do, but not like with full ritual. I save those for the Sabbaths. I have this wonderful travel altar that Trina, Sunshine Morning Ray, gave me. And inside of this altar, she had several things already for me. But this is just a wooden box that you can get from like Hobby Lobby or something like that. As you can see, it's not very thick. She had put into there these lovely little candle holders for me. They are wooden and they don't have anything on the inside, but you can put like putty in there to put your candles into. She had this nice big beautiful seashell. She put brick dust in there. She put a vial of this absolutely phenomenal smelling oil. I've yet to figure out what she put in here or what oil she's using, but it smells amazing. And then she also had given me a little mini goddess, a figurine of the goddess, a small sage stick, some candles, and a red jasper stone to represent earth. So there's also a water dish and a little altar bell with citrine around it. And I take this with me whenever I go traveling. She also included some incense. There's incense matches in here. She put a little altar cloth in here and salt. Now I have added a few things to this that I take with me. I added some gold and silver candles to the red and to the white and black ones that she put in there. I added a lighter. I added this little besom that was sent to me, and then I also added this little book of shadows. I did an exchange, an Ostara exchange with somebody a few years back, and she had made me this lovely little book of shadows that she embossed. And I actually have put things in here that might be things that I want to use when I'm out on the road. So I have a little book of shadows. It's got my ritual in there and so on and so forth. So this I can take with me, and with this I can have a Sabbath ready altar at any time. And so when I travel like to San Antonio or anything like that, when I go out of town for business, I always take this with me so that I have something I can work with right away, and I can create a space for myself where I can actually do some sort of ritual. However, I want to go at this from a different angle, because this is not absolutely necessary. You actually don't need anything at all other than your mind to create a sacred space wherever you go. And I think that that is something that a lot of people have misconceptions about. Your altar or your sacred space where you commune with spirit and with the god and goddess does not have to be a physical space. It can be the physical space you are in, but in your mind you are creating a temple. And for those of you that have read Raven Grimassi's The Witch's Craft, he does discuss this. He talks about making like an astral temple for yourself, and it's a place that you visualize continuously that you can go to in which to work on spiritual things or your craft or do spell work. That is not a physical location. in terms of you're not walking into a temple or what have you. And the reason you want to create this astral temple for yourself is because you need to be able to create a space when you can't get somewhere or you don't have your tools. Because remember, I've always said that your most powerful tool is what's in here. You don't physically need any other tools to do the craft. We like to have tools because they help us to visualize, they help us to direct our energy, but if you can control your energy enough and create that space for yourself, you do not need any other tools to create magic. So I think that meditation is the number one way to create a sacred space for yourself wherever you are. And I read a quote from a Buddhist monk that says Buddhist monks can meditate in 5 minutes. And that's true. Now, there are a lot of you that are new to this or have not done meditation a lot as a practice, and so you're like, oh, I just can't clear my mind. Meditation isn't just about clearing your mind, and that was one of the biggest misconceptions about meditation that I had to let go of when I started it as a practice for myself. And I have talked about meditation a lot in some of our other videos and some of the videos on my own channel. But meditation is a good way to get inside your own head and to get into that spiritual plane, which is where you need to be to create a sacred space in the first place. You've got to have your head in the right place. And so it's not a matter of draining your mind of all information, because our minds constantly work and there's always going to be some thought there. It's a matter of not getting so hung up on one thought that you let go of the mindfulness that is present in meditation, because when you are meditating, you are supposed to be being mindful. You're supposed to be aware of your own breathing. So every time I find my mind starting to get hooked up on a single thought, I let that thought go and I start focusing again on my breathing. And you can physically, I will feel a shift in myself. And it's almost as if I'm getting a little lightheaded, but I can feel a shift when I've reached that point of meditation where I'm actually where I need to be. And sometimes, like when I close my eyes to meditate, I see colors. Sometimes I see like bursts. It's usually like bursts of color, like they're kind of floating out. Sometimes it's just black, but I will focus on the darkness, or I will focus on the colors and allow my mind to go into a place where I can connect with my spirit guides and with my ancestors. I try to do a lot of work with my ancestors. I try to connect with them on a very deep level. That to me is a sacred space, and you can do that anywhere, in your car, in a meeting, in a wherever, and you don't have to close your eyes to do it once you get good enough at it. And that does take some practice, but you can actually just find a focal point and put all your focus onto that point and shift your consciousness to where you are now in that astral temple and cleanse yourself. And I do this often, like when my husband and I are arguing. You know, he thinks I'm just staring him down, but the fact of the matter is I'm no longer present in the room, especially when he's just because I have a horrible temper, and my temper used to be very violent. I would lash out, and so I have learned to control that through the practice of meditation and shifting myself into a sacred space. Some people will tell you that in order to have a sacred space, you've got to cleanse the area and all of that. And I do like doing those things, but sometimes those things are not possible. Now, I mean, if you want to carry little packets of salt from the restaurant in your pocket and chuck it around, I guess you could do that. And that's not saying that you can't do that, or brick dust or something like that, because certainly that's going to secure your space. But if you simply visualize a white or a blue, I usually do it as like a flaming light, not a laser, but like a flaming light, like a fire around myself, then you have effectively created that sacred space right around you where you are. So don't think that you need any special tools to create a sacred space for yourself. And that's one of the myths that I really wanted to dispel in this video, because I think that a lot of people feel intimidated about creating a sacred space, and they're freaking out thinking, how am I going to be able to do any spell work if I'm, or any kind of spiritual work if I can't create a sacred space for myself with all the right tools? You don't need it. You just need to put your focus on shifting yourself to a space that is sacred for you. Now, I personally, in my practice, like to visualize the same space. Like, for example, when I'm trying to shift into that level of consciousness, I will often travel through the colors that burst out when I close my eyes or that I see, or in my mind I visualize myself going through a forest typically, and within that forest for me is a temple that I have created for myself, and I see the same space each time I do it because I created it for myself. I built it for myself, and that is where I transport myself in order to shift my consciousness back to a level. So it helps me to gain control of my temper. It helps me to gain control of my mouth, because my mouth tends to run, especially when I'm irritated. And it allows me to reconnect myself to my ancestors who guide me through whatever difficulty I'm experiencing at the moment. So in short, you don't really need anything to create a sacred space for yourself. You don't necessarily have to cleanse a space. The idea of cleansing a sacred space is to once again shift your consciousness and to eliminate any negative energies that may be in the area. And that may not always be possible physically, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't create a sacred space for yourself in the astral plane or in your mind to go to when you need to connect in some way to spirit or to your guides, or to just get insight, or to just calm yourself. So if you're having trouble with this, I recommend checking out the Honest Guys. They have a YouTube channel and they're phenomenal. The guy has got the best voice, but they have done a couple of videos on creating kind of a temple for yourself. They have one called the Cottage in the Snow that can become your sacred space. You can there's another one that I cannot remember. It's called the Sanctuary. That's what it is, the Sanctuary. And so if you look up that video, you can use that as a way to start creating a sacred space for yourself in the astral plane. And that way you don't need any tools. If you've got the tools, that's great. Use them, because they are helpful in getting yourself to a position and being able to do things that you feel comfortable doing. But you need to, as a magical being and a person of spirit, you need to be comfortable also with creating a space for yourself that's not necessarily physical. I think we need to really be cautious of getting hung up on needing things in order to do magic, because remember, tools are just kind of a convenience. They're not a necessity. So don't let that stop you from being who you are and doing what you need to do to create that sacred space for yourself. So again, I encourage you to check out the Honest Guys. Go check out their video, The Sanctuary. I'm sure there's other videos online about creating an astral temple. You might want to pick up Raven Grimassi's The Witch's Craft, where he's got a section on that. It's a really good book. I don't agree with everything that he puts in there regarding origins of witchcraft, because he tends to make it sound like all witchcraft originates from Italy, and we know that people were practicing magic in other parts of the world around the same time. But he does have a lot of really good points in there, and that building an astral temple was one that I really locked into, and it was what allowed me to realize that I didn't necessarily need tools or a travel altar or any kind of thing, that I can put myself in that space just wherever I am. And I have done so many times since, and it's been a real saver for me. So get out there and explore a little bit. Start doing a little bit for yourself and trying to visualize yourself physically building a temple if necessary, and give yourself that space, because it will be the greatest gift you can give yourself, I guarantee. I hope you all have a wonderful week. Thank you so much for watching, and blessed be.